Welcome to Torah Talk, brothers and sisters. Welcome to Torah Talk, brothers and sisters. Brothers and sisters.
Breaking my heart with your unbelief. I ain't gonna wait forever. Who do you think you're fooling? Who do you think you're fooling? You're either hot or you are cold. And people, it's all or nothing now. People now.
Brothers and sisters, welcome to the Torah Talk Show with Lou White and Mark Davidson.
The Sharp Signal Series.
A Torah Institute production.
It's me.
It is him.
It is me.
Hey.
How are you, brother?
Look at this.
Oh, it's so good to see you.
How are you, sister?
I'm blessed. I'm never better.
Can you see her?
It's really good to see you.
Yeah, you too.
You look great. How's Amy?
She's well. She's very well.
And the children?
Yeah, they're great. Having a good time.
They like their new school?
Yeah, it's very sunny down here right now, so it's they're going to the beach and all sorts of stuff.
Oh, okay. They're not in school today. I keep forgetting.
They're at school during the day.
During the day. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. It's at times. It's very confusing, especially for somebody dyslexic like I am.
Yeah.
It's good to see you. Love
you.
you.
Too. We love you guys.
Love you. Well, what would you like to talk about?
Well, brothers and sisters, welcome to the Torah Talk Show. My name is Mark Davidson and I'm joined by Lou White.
Hello.
I thought today we'd talk about Yahusha, funnily enough.
The living Torah.
Yeah, the Passover lamb.
The creator.
And how he's everything. That's what why we do all this.
Glad you mentioned that. He is the Passover.
Yeah. So I
The
thought,
elder.
yeah, I thought, well, we've done a few different studies, the Lamb legacy and things like that, but just to talk about Yahusha himself and who he is and just what he did and what he fulfilled, and you know how he's the Aleph Torah, and there's all little traces of that throughout the whole scripture, and you know, just throwing us hints all along the way that he's part of the whole body of work. It's all about him. So, yeah, I don't know where to start.
I don't either, because he's the beginning and he's the end and he's everything in the middle. And
Start at the end.
it's just when you want to do. But
What song is it that starts out, I love you?
I love you. I love you, Yahuwah. That would be Psalm 18, I believe.
You could start with that
The
one.
very first part of the psalm. Oh, you want to look at that?
Yes,
You know,
sir.
because We talked about the shadows of things to come, and it's spoken of as being these things that are like new moons and festivals and Sabbaths and all those things, and food and drink. They're shadows. They're not the actual image of the thing casting the shadow, but they're for the body of Messiah. And that mistranslation in that verse is so sad, because Hebrews 10 actually goes into a better explanation of that. But let's talk about it. Let's look at Psalm 18. Here it comes. All right. Psalm 18, verse 1. I love you, O Yahuwah, my strength. Yahuwah is my rock and my stronghold and my deliverer. My El is my rock. I take refuge in him, my shield and the horn of my deliverance, my high tower. Anyway, he goes on and talks about how it's going to save us from our enemies, and he saves us from our enemies. And, it's so wonderful to see David, or Daoud, was the king of Israel. At this time, he probably wasn't, but, he was writing all these songs, He was a songwriter. You know what? I bet he's going to have to learn how to play guitar.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
because there's been new instruments.
He said he played some little thing, didn't it? It was a harp or something.
Yeah.
String instrument.
Well, that's what a guitar is. It's a harp.
Yeah.
I'm going to feel a kindred spirit in many ways with him, and I'm sure you are too, because you're a songwriter. We're both musicians. We love stringed instruments.
Yeah.
Hell
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So we love his Torah too, and that's the thing that makes everything so different. We're some kind of what do they call us? Heretics, because we actually love the commandments, and that's the objective that Yahusha had for us, to have his Torah written upon our hearts, a love for his Torah, and that's why we're such freaks. And I'm sorry, it's just, and it's, I guess people feel guilty or something around this, but I feel guilty too, but my guilt has been lifted from me. I'm free, because of him.
Yeah.
But
speaking of music, this is a side point. I don't know why it's popped into my head. I think it was years ago. You wrote me an email that said something about us musicians. It was something about the type of, you went into the science of it. Some people get lost in music. Some people get like intoxicated by music. Something like that you were saying, and you had all these terms and terminology, and you knew what you were talking about. It was so fascinating. And I said, yeah, because I'm like that. I know Chris is like that. Like, you could just sit there and you go into another world. Just if a certain person with a certain voice hits a certain note, you just go, boom, your eyes roll back and you've gone, And like, it's just...
Well, the average person doesn't even understand what we're talking about, but I completely.
I've seen Lou do that so many times.
Oh yeah, I've been in a trance just playing, and Phyllis can't talk. Hello, where are you? I've left the building. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, music is just so incredible. It's intoxicating, in a good way.
Yeah.
And it does evoke emotions, but I kind of stay away from certain sorts of styles of music that evokes anger. I don't like that. But I never could understand why some people didn't have an appetite for more music. But it's just that it's a gift. But you said Chris is he's also a musician?
No, he just loves music and the arts and all that sort of thing.
He's one of us. Yeah.
Yeah. He doesn't play an instrument, but he taught me a lot about music back when I was a kid, and he just taught me how to, because we were back in the circus at that point, and he was just teaching me how to, make your voice sort of stay still, and he used to call it the beautiful thing, and what he meant was vibrato, but he didn't know the term, so he used to call it the beautiful thing, and he'd say, bring that beautiful thing forth in your voice, and it would touch people's hearts, because when you're a kid you don't really know what you're doing or how to sing or anything, and he'd say, bring forth the beautiful thing, and it was vibrato. So if you hold the note and you vibrate it and stop vibrating, you just control your voice. Because being in salons all his life, and all the greats, Shirley Bassey and Barbara and all these people, he just had this amazing appreciation for people who could really sing,
As opposed to those that couldn't really sing.
That's right. So yeah.
Uh-huh.
So yeah.
Well, Mark, you can sing, and so can your lovely wife. I mean, you're a beautiful singer.
She's wonderful.
The beautiful thing is coming forth.
Yeah.
Speaking of going out of this world, Brother Chris is on his way now, I think, as I understand it, launching forth into the atmosphere, headed this way.
Yes.
And that's we're looking so forward to meeting him in the flesh.
That'll be exciting.
So, yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, they're very excited.
Oh, well, it's just we're both looking so forward to it.
Yeah.
Are they really on the plane right now?
I think they are. I thought that they said that they were already on their way.
I think they'll be already somewhere by now. They left yesterday morning, yesterday afternoon, I think. So I think they'll be somewhere already. I think they were having a stopover at Hawaii or somewhere. I don't know where. I couldn't keep up with the itinerary.
Yeah.
But it was exciting. So,
Yeah. Well, the object of our faith is Yahusha himself, and that's why a lot of people say, if I have enough faith, or if I believe more sincerely or more intensely, it's not how much you're doing. It's a matter of putting your trust in the correct object. See, if people put their trust in their own trust, it doesn't make sense. It's just like, oh, that's not the object. The object is not anything to do with you. It has to do with him. And being who he is, putting your trust in the object, the correct object, then you feel more secure too. It's not just about feeling, but you will be more secure, and joy will be easier because you won't feel like you're constantly panicking and worrying about the things in this world that are coming about, the fear and all that. It just lifts off of you. And when people are angry with you or hate you, you don't look at them. That's the storm. You look at him. He's the object. You won't sink because he can sustain you. He lifts you up and makes your feet stand upon a solid foundation. And it's always going to be him. But he overcomes the world for us. We don't have to do that.
Well, speaking of foundations, why do you think, when you were an unbeliever, why do you think that by coming across Isaiah or Yeshayahu 53 woke you up? What do you think about why? What was it about that text? You can read it if you like, since we're talking about.
I think you should, because at the time of Passover, that psalm actually reflects Passover. It reflects him. That's what I mean when I say Passover. And I realized that I had known him all my life. I did believe in him. I just didn't know him. And I was confronted with him as if he was right there in my face when I was opening those pages, because he was speaking into my heart from those words. And Psalm 22 is also a message about what he did as our Passover. Psalm 22. We probably would want to look at that. Let's look at Yeshayahu, or Isaiah as they call him, chapter 53. First I have to find Isaiah. It's written as Isaiah in this program. Now let's see, 53, it's right there. All right, verse 1 of Yeshayahu 53. Yeshayahu, his name, Yahu is a shorter form of the name. It's 3 letters, Yod, He, Ua, Yahu. It's not Yahweh. Anyway, Yesha, or Yasha, is actually a root for deliverance, and it's in our Messiah's name. Yeshayahu's name is kind of an inversion of, with a chord. To invert a chord is to change the root of the chord and move it. and the rest of the notes invert. Well, Yeshayahu is sort of an inversion of the name Yahusha, because it means Yahusha. Yah is our salvation, or Yah is our deliverer. Anyway, starting at verse 1. Who has believed our report? Now that word report is basar, if I'm not mistaken. It means the message. And to whom was the arm of Yahuwah revealed? For he grew up before him as a tender plant and as a root out of dry ground. He has no form or splendor that we should look upon him, nor appearance that we should desire him. Despised and rejected by men, a man of pains and knowing sickness, and as one from whom the face is hidden, being despised, and we did not consider him. Truly he has borne our sicknesses and carried our pains. Yet we reckoned him stricken, smitten by Elohim, and afflicted. But he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our crookednesses. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and by his stripes we are healed. We, all like sheep, went astray. Each one of us has turned to his own way, and Yahuwah has laid on him the crookedness of us all. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, but he did not open his mouth. He was led as a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before its shearers is silent, but he did not open his mouth. He was taken from prison and from judgment, and as for his generation, who considered that he shall be cut off from the land of the living? For the transgression of my people he was stricken, and he was appointed a grave with the wrong, and with the rich at his death, because he had done no violence, nor was deceit in his mouth. But Yahuwah was pleased to crush him. He laid sickness on him, and he made himself an offering for guilt. He would see a seed, he would prolong his days, and the pleasure of Yahuwah prosper in his hand. He would see the result of the suffering of his life and be satisfied. Through his knowledge, my righteous servant makes many righteous, and he bears their crookednesses. Therefore I give him a portion among the great, and he divides the spoil with the strong, because he poured out his being unto death, and he was counted with the transgressors, and he bore the sin of many, and made intercession for the transgressors. See, that grabbed me. And being into science and searching for truth, that raw truth was alive. It wasn't like it was just words in a book. This was a presence, you know. And then we have Psalm 22, which is almost unbearable to read, but it talks about our Passover. Would you, Psalm 23 and Psalm 24, it identifies him, you know. But then, you know, there's a word, chirographin, that the end of Yeshayahu or Isaiah 53 talks about, and how his death, and he bore the sin of many, and he wiped the slate clean, basically. There's something called a chirographin in the Greek, and it means handwritten ordinances, or the list of our accusations. And we've talked about that before, and how the accuser in a court will hold the list of our transgressions and read it out before the court. And when we come to the court, the list is cleaned. It's not there, and there's no accusations against us. Many of the Christians are thought that, and let me find that I don't have it written down here, but isn't it Corinthians? Let's see, 2 Corinthians, something like that. Praise Yahusha for, it's early in the morning here, and no, it's Colossians. What am I saying? Sorry, 2 Colossians. Now this is interesting, because Colossians 2, starting at verse 1, why not? For I wish you to know what a great struggle I have for you and those in Laodicea, and for as many as have not seen my face in the flesh, in order that their hearts might be encouraged, being knit together in love, and to all riches of the entire confirmation of the understanding, to a true knowledge of the secret of Elohim, and of the Father, and of the Messiah, in whom are hidden all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. And this I say, so that no one deceives you with enticing words. For though I am absent in the flesh, yet I am with you in spirit, rejoicing to see your good order and the steadfastness of your belief in Messiah. Therefore, as you accepted Messiah Yahushua the Master, walk in him, having been rooted and built up in him and established in the belief, as you were taught, overflowing in it with thanksgiving. See to it that no one makes a prey of you, though through philosophy and empty deceit, according to the traditions of men, according to the elementary matters of the world, and not according to Messiah. Because in him dwells all the completeness of the mightiness, bodily. In other words, he was fully inhabited by Yahuwah. And you have been made complete in him, who is the head of all principality and authority. In him you were also circumcised with a circumcision not made with hands, in the putting off of the body of the sins of the flesh, by the circumcision of Messiah, having been buried with him in immersion, in which you were also raised with him through the belief in the working of Elohim, who raised him from the dead. And you, being dead in your trespasses, and the uncircumcision of your flesh, he has made alive together with him, having forgiven you all trespasses, having blotted out the certificate of debt against us by the dogmas which stood against us. And he has taken it out of the way, having nailed it to the stake. Having stripped the principalities and the authorities, he made a public display of them, having prevailed over them in it. Let no one therefore judge you in eating or in drinking, or in respect of a festival, or a new moon, or Sabbaths, which are a shadow of what is to come for the body of the Messiah. Let no one deprive you of the prize, one who takes delight in false humility and worship of messengers, taking his stand on what he has not seen, and puffed up by his fleshly mind, and not holding fast to the head, from whom all the body, nourished and knit together by joints and ligaments, grows with the growth of Elohim. If then you died with Messiah from the elementary matters of the world, why, as though living in the world, do you subject yourselves to regulations? Do not touch, do not taste, do not handle, which are all to perish with use, according to the commands of men, and not of Elohim. These indeed have an appearance of wisdom in self-imposed worship, humiliation, and harsh treatment of the body, of no value at all, only for satisfaction to the flesh. In other words, they're vainly trying to worship Yahuwah by not doing certain things. And he's not talking about, he's talking about man-made rules, is what he's talking about. But the idea of the chirographin, that the handwriting, the certificate of debt that was against us, which stood against us. See, those are court terms that he's using there. And that's what Yeshayahu or Isaiah 53 was really discussing, the trespasses that we had committed. And Colossians 2 is discussing that very same thing. And how when we pledged ourselves in immersion, that was wiped clean.
So the chirographin that you're talking about is the fact that the Christians say that the law, or the commandments, what they're referring to as the law, they say, oh, that's been nailed to the stake, nailed to the cross. What you're saying is it's not the commandments or the law that's been nailed and abolished, it's the actual debt certificate of wrongs.
Right.
Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what that's saying, and it's been misinterpreted and mishandled. And the thing that people miss is that they think that because of his sacrifice and his perfect life, he has already completed everything for us, and we can live without the law, without the the commandments. But yet that's not at all what we're taught in Scripture. If we take away how to love Yahuwah and how to love our neighbor, which is the first 4 and the last 6 of the 10 Commandments, then we don't know what sin is. We can see that's why they have things like statues and praying to dead people, saints as they call them. Men do not proclaim people saints. You have to be a saint while you're alive in order for you to be one after you're dead, because you're not even resurrected yet. If you die, what you see under the sun is ceased. I mean, you have no contact. You're not able to communicate with anyone. You're in the grave, and everything that you did in the flesh is recorded in the memory of Yahuwah. And Yahuwah is written on my shirt here in the Paleo Hebrew, for those that may not be familiar with the name of the Creator. That's something that the certificate of debt, though, is the thing that was nailed and taken out of the way. And so when the accuser holds it in the court, in the heavenly court, the accused stands forgiven of all of his transgressions, and there is no record. The record is gone, and Yahuwah doesn't even remember it. We might remember what we were before we went into the water and called upon his name for deliverance, but we can put that out of our mind too, because all of that was another person. That person died in the water, and what came up out of the water was a new creation. And we're talking about the heart. The person's heart was altered, and they're seen as a completely new babe, like they were endowed with a little bit of the spirit of the living Yahusha. And that's why I think it's so strange. Having remembered training in the Catholic institution when I was raised up, the thing that happened was they had the operation of the communion. They would take this little wafer, little cookie, little bread thing, and they would lay it towards your tongue, and you'd have to stick your tongue out. And as they would put it on your tongue, the priest would utter the words, "This is my body," as if the bread was the body, because he had consecrated it, as he said, pronouncing over it the name, what is it they say? Hoc est corpus meum, which means this is my body. And the priest is thought of as being Messiah, and he can pronounce those words over bread and change it into his body, and then distribute it. And what they're trying to do is another little miniature Passover every time they do that at what they call a Mass. But what they're missing is Passover is only done once a year. But Passover is him. And he is saying, "This is my body, which is given for you and broken." He's illustrating a metaphoric illustration of himself that was about to go into them as food. It wasn't that the bread was him. He was still there, but he was telling them, "I'm going to be in you and become part with you and share in your lives," in a spiritual sense. That's why he had to go away, so that he could come back in the spirit form and fill his temple, the people. But we are his body. It isn't a little wafer. Yeah. See, that's the misunderstanding. And then they think that they're performing a bloodless sacrifice, which is completely impossible, because without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness of sins. I think Hebrews 10 talks about that. And Numbers, Leviticus, those places. And it's just incredible that they would think that. But it all started with Genesis, though. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, a lot of people don't understand the power of the concept of his blood, because the scriptures that say out there that all of our life is in the blood, or all our life is in our blood, And was there something about the fact that Yahusha's blood, it was not like his body was from, how did they put it? His body was from his mother, but his blood was from the father, or something like that. Is that true? That's why he had perfect blood, because his blood was not human. Oh, I forget how it went now. Is that right?
Well, it is true that it wasn't transferred through Yusuf or Yosef. It was transferred through Miriam. The lineage was actually through her. But you can overshoot a lot of these things if you start overanalyzing. But anyway, I was gonna read Leviticus or Wayikra, chapter 17, verse 11. It talks about the blood and the sprinkling of the blood, which is Messiah's blood is sprinkled upon our hearts, which is the thing that cleanses us. Anyway, and I think it's verse 11. Let's see. Let's start with verse 10. And any man of the house of Israel, or of the strangers who sojourn among you, who eats any blood, I shall set my face against that being who eats blood, and shall cut him off from among his people. For the life of the flesh is in the blood. That's what you were talking about. I have given it to you upon the altar to make atonement for your lives, for it is the blood that makes atonement for the life.
Wow. I thought it was amazing, the concept of his blood, in that if we enter into, like, his blood is what brings, like, the dimensions together. Like, he's in another dimension right here, and we're here in another dimension, and because of sin they were separated. That's what Adam and Kawhi had in the garden. They were able to see into the, I'm guessing, but through his blood, the dimensions, we have open heavens, in a sense, that we can. There's a scripture for that too, isn't it? We have direct access to the throne room, or something like that.
Yes, we do. We're actually, because he's there, we're also there. But it does. You mentioned how it goes back to Genesis, and when we read Genesis or Bereshith chapter 3, in verse 21, it says, "And Yahuwah Elohim made coats of skin for the man and his wife and dressed them." Now, a lot of people might read over that and say, well, coats of skin, yeah, that's great. Well, that was the first death of any animal, apparently. The animals were not destined to die. They were created perfect in their forms. And it was only until after the man and his wife transgressed the law, the Torah, the instructions, that death entered the world for the first time. There isn't when Adam and Kawhi were walking the earth, there wasn't like a bunch of bones in the soil from dead animals. The only thing that ever happened was plants would wither, but they wouldn't die, because they're a little different from the way animals are. We breathe air and so forth, and we have body heat. Plants don't. You don't go over to a plant and warm up. Hey, well, but Elohim made coats of skin. Do you? Well, you might. It's on fire, yeah. But if it's just out there growing in the forest, you don't go up to it and go, "Whew, yeah, I was getting a little chilly. Thank you." Anyway, but Elohim made coats of skin for the man and his woman and dressed them, because their eyes were opened and they knew things that they didn't know before. They found that they were naked. And anyway, there was some kind of a covering that was necessary for them because of their guilt, and that was a result of that blood atonement. Once again, it's the beginning of that process. And when the children of Adam and Kawhi at the certain time of year would come before Yahuwah and make offerings to him, he expected a blood offering, Do
you think he would have had those three main appointed times, or the 7 high Sabbaths, but the 3 main periods of time? Do you think those are the times that they would have come together still, or do you think that would have not been brought in officially till Moshe received the feast, the appointed times.
Well, it's a lot of people's thought processes that at least Passover was instituted in its proto form after they were expelled from the Garden of Eden. So that's what we see when Yahuwah took an animal and killed it and used the skin to cover them. That would be the beginning. And we don't know, but the skin could have been dripping blood even while he had taken it and put it on them. And they were going, wow. They didn't know what was happening. But we understand, looking down through the centuries in the past, we can understand it, that the Lamb of Elohim was in types all through time. But the festivals, though, that we observe, the three main times of the year that Christianity doesn't know anything about. Well, they have started a little bit with Passover because they keep using the word Passover. Yahuwah is our Passover. Well, that was something that I believe was instituted at that point, and then Cain and Abel were observing Passover in their lifetimes when we read it as recorded there in the book of Bereshith or Genesis.
A lot of people like to have discussions about the drink offerings and the sin offerings and all those different offerings that they were commanded to do and what they spiritually signify today. Do you tend to think like that? I tend to think, well, our whole lives are supposed to be a whole possession and a sacrifice. So why pick it? Why pick out and be specific? Aren't we?
Sure. What you said is a perfect illustration of what our lives reflect. It's not so much our lives, but we're buried in Messiah's life. He's living through us if we're making our vessels completely available to him. And it's going to show the fruit. It's going to have those 9 fruits of the Spirit. The love is going to be the foremost thing. And if a person has a different understanding of something, then we can guide them. We don't accuse them of anything. We're not hateful. We're not shunning them. We just say, okay, you're doing this, you're doing that a little bit out of kilter. A lot of times people observe the festivals at different times because they privately interpret what the time of the month it is. They say, oh, there's the crescent. And there's no crescent mentioned at all. And in the full moon and the new moon, you're to blow the shofar, on the day of your feast, Well, in the full moon, the moon is full, If you just back up, you see that it's a dark moon, But those issues, if you allow those kinds of things to divide you, then you have failed in the very first thing, and that's love. You accept them. Because those are shadows. And literally we're interpreting shadows there, aren't we? On the shadows of the moon. But in 1 Corinthians chapter 5, there's an interesting statement for those of the people out there that may be preterists, No, I'm not going to explain all that. Preterist, if you want to look up what that means, look it up on Google. A preterist is somebody who believes that everything is already fulfilled. Okay. Just in case. But 1 Corinthians chapter 5 is a very interesting thing. There's a discussion about the assembly in Corinth, and Paul is writing to them about somebody who he's heard is living with his own mother as a wife, which is not even done among the Gentiles. Even the Gentiles are not that heinous.
Unless you're Nimrod. Didn't Nimrod do that?
Well, they say. But it wasn't a common practice, that's certainly true. But it talks about how they were to deliver such a one to Satan for destruction of the flesh, in order that his spirit be saved in the day of the Master. So, on the great and awesome day of Yahuwah, there's still hope for those kind of people, apparently. But anyway, he says, your boasting is not good. Do you not know that a little leaven leavens the entire lump? Now, he's referring to leaven in that verse as being something that's not good. It's a corruption. So corruption in the teachings and in walks can cause other people to imitate that. And then, of course, we see that in Christianity now. They've adopted from pagan sources many forms of leaven. And even the leaven of the Pharisees, they were human traditions or men's traditions that were brought in and expected to be obeyed. But anyway, this leaven, Paul is referring to as likening it to the things that we do around the time of Passover and the festival of matzah, or unleavened bread. Anyway, in verse 7 of chapter 5 of 1 Corinthians, it says, "Therefore, cleanse out the old leaven, so that you are a new lump, as you are unleavened. For also Messiah, our Passover, was offered for us. So then let us observe the festival, not with the old leaven, nor with the leaven of evil and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth." Well, that's actually him saying that we're to keep the festival of Passover. It's, to remember the death of Messiah at the time of Passover. And yet Christianity says, well, those are Jewish festivals. Well, no, they're actually festivals of the Nazarene, because Nazarene are his ambassadors on the earth, and always were, and they were hunted by those that were in rebellion. I mean, Nazarene weren't running around massacring people.
Yeah.
The one that's violent is the one that's usually in the wrong, unless they're commanded by Yahuwah to go out and exterminate people, which they have had to do because of the heinous things they were doing, like offering their children in the fire. The heathens were doing that, and Israel was told to wipe them out and don't learn their ways, don't intermarry with them. So anyway, in cleansing out the old leaven, we have to make sure that we don't adopt from the outside, especially practices of former heathens that were worshiping Satan.
Back in Colossians, I think it was, there was a text that said, "In him dwelt the fullness." How did that go? How did it go again?
Oh, well, we could look that up.
Yeah.
Let's see, Colossians. I think that's chapter 2, or is it chapter 3?
You read
Wait a
it
minute.
about. You read it
Yeah.
long ago.
Okay, let's see. Well, no, it was chapter 2. We did read it, actually. Of course, most people understand in the King James Version that the words are, "In him dwelled all the fullness of deity." Yeah. In Colossians chapter 2:9, it started 2:8. I like that. "See to it that no one makes you a prey." In other words, makes you carries you away through philosophy and empty deceit, according to the tradition of men, according to the elementary matters of the world, and not according to the Messiah. Because in him dwells all the fullness or completeness of the mightiness bodily. And it's interesting.
When do you think that happened to him? When do you think he was just a little toddler running around with the fullness in him, or do you think it happened at his immersion? I know he was baffling all the priests when he went to the temple and everything, but do you think he was just born with that in him? I mean, I know he is the Father and the Father is the Son, and that's a whole different topic altogether, but do you think he actually knew who he was when he was like a kid?
We really don't know the answer to that, but I will say this, that there was a recording in Matthew, I believe it was, and when Yehukanan, or John the Baptist, was saying, "Behold the Lamb of Elohim," he went to him, Yahusha went to Yehukanan to be immersed by him. And at that time, of course, we know that Yehukanan didn't want him to do that. He said, "Well, I'm unworthy." Well, he said, "Go ahead, we need to fulfill all righteousness." And then he did it. And when he came up out of the water, Yahusha saw the heavens opened. And it was really a wonderful text. I wonder if I could find the exact words of that. Let me see if I can find that.
Keep
And,
throwing these whammies at you.
no, that's great. Let's see. Yes, Matthew chapter 3:16. Let's say we go here and then there. Well, this is the ISR translation. And then Yahusha came from Galilee to Yehukanan at the Yarden to be immersed by him. But Yehukanan was hindering him, saying, I need to be immersed by you, and you come to me? But Yahusha answering said to him, permit it now, for thus it is fitting for us to fill or complete all righteousness. Then he permitted him. And having been immersed, Yahusha went up immediately from the water, and see, the heavens were opened, and he saw the Spirit of Elohim descending like a dove and coming upon him. And see, a voice out of the heavens saying, this is my beloved Son. This is my Son, the beloved, in whom I delight. Now that's the last few verses of that third chapter. So, yeah, it might be the Spirit of Elohim descended like a dove and coming upon him. So,
yeah,
we can make a doctrine out of that and argue about it.
That's it. There must have been two. He was talking to himself.
Oh, yeah, that's another thing, too.
Yeah.
How many of them are there? Oh,
Yeah.
boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's just look up that Trinitarian section in the Scriptures and go right to that, eh?
Yeah.
Or the duality. Yeah. Well, Yahusha is not schizophrenic,
No.
There's one text in the Tanakh where it says that Yahuwah rained fire down upon Sodom from Yahuwah in the heavens. So there's two Yahuwahs, and people argue about that too.
Oh, wow.
Speaking of Sodom, boy, it's getting to be like the days of Sodom. They're marching in the streets.
Yeah. Any particular march today, or?
Oh, they're always doing something and putting out newspapers and,
Yeah.
coming in there and telling you about their abominable ideas. And
Yeah.
I don't run around as a breeder, a heterosexual, and telling everybody about that, saying, hey, let me tell you about that. It's crazy. I mean, it's just, what is that?
It's a full-on thing, that movement. Like Amy and I have been watching this young people, like young show. It's called Glee, and the music in it is fantastic. But I tell you what, it has such a strong. I've said to Amy, do you realise how it's not visually wicked, but just the underlying concepts that they're feeding young people about how it's okay to be confused or one way or the other or both, or all this. I said that is so confusing for young people. The music's fantastic, but it's such a, and they're feeding young people with all this stuff. It's so wicked.
Yeah, there was a flashcard that I had, and I mentioned this before. But if you were Satan, the very first thing on the list is no Torah taught to children, and then the result would be all these things: immorality, no father figure, no fear, the family breakdown. Now the teachers are living in fear because they wouldn't teach the commandments. I don't know what in the world they think is wrong with the 10 Commandments, but they are really against them, And that's because I have a cascade of various things falling down here. Because the adversary is not going to be able to be worshipped if Yahuwah is competing with him all the time. And even in spite of that, he's removed his name from the 10 Commandments. I mean, I'm talking about Satan has removed Yahuwah's name because it says, instead of I am Yahuwah, your Elohim, it says I am the Lord, your God.
I'm Satan, you're Satan.
Yeah, B-A-A-L, the Lord.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
That's just not right. And then we're here to restore the 10 Commandments. This is a Torah talk.
Yeah.
The Torah talk is, and I had a really amazing epiphany when I realized that the Zodiac, which I was starting to hear coming at me from various members of the body, hey, you've got to read this book. In this book, it's explaining that the stars and the animals and the shapes in the sky are all about the redemption plan. And I'm going, what? And I don't know. Yahuwah didn't wire me in the right way. I mean, he wired me in the right way, I'm sure, to perceive outside doctrines, because, we've talked about eisegesis and exegesis. Exegesis, for the people that don't know, is when you read the text, you form your doctrines from what you're reading, and no outside ideas are there. But eisegesis is you're coming to the thing with a whole bunch of outside ideas, and you read those into the text and force them into your belief system. And that's what most people do, because things like, we've talked about many aspects of it. Those are strongholds, though. But not having to obey the commandments is one of the things that they read into the text. They're looking for a little part of a sentence or a phrase where they can insert that idea. When Yahuwah has no intention of ever having us walk in a lawless way. What's this legalism thing? Can you find legalism anywhere in the scriptures and say, yeah, if anybody obeys the commandments, wow, they're going to be in big trouble, aren't they? That's just not fair.
Yeah.
It's just the opposite. It's those that are lawless.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And there it is. She brought me this. And I've already read that.
Thanks, sister.
Yes. I'm trying to. I was just bringing Lou a note he made for himself.
Yeah, I wrote this note. Let us keep the feast.
Yeah.
We read that a couple of times now, because we need to keep the feasts in order to understand the redemption. See, the redemption isn't about what we're doing. A lot of people say, well, I don't know if I'm obeying the commandment here correctly because I'm not doing it right. It's nothing that you're doing to redeem yourself. That's one of the misnomers. It's a matter of recognizing what he's done, and we do those things at times of the year. That's why we don't want to grab each other's throats and saying, you're not doing it right. You've got the wrong day, or whatever. But these are shadows. Shadows have lots of fuzzy edges.
You're not eating lamb.
You're not eating lamb. You've got an egg. You've got an egg on your plate. Well, I don't have an egg on my plate, but I'm not going to go condemn my brother because he's got an egg because he's watching somebody else. You just keep your eyes on the Messiah, because he is the Passover, and he is our unleavened bread. He's the thing that makes us unleavened. He sprinkles our hearts. And why would we want to turn on each other and say, you're not spelling his name right. You're leaving letters out. You're slurring it. You've got the wrong letters in there. Let's not do that. Let's be kind, and gentle. How can you get along with somebody like that, We're not all knowing, we're all stumbling in kind of a dark world, trying to fumble with languages that have been corrupted by Latin, Greek, French, German. The Hebrew is the original. So if we go back and just look at the pure language and then bring it over as best we can do it, we're at least starting at the right place, But when I was growing up, thank you. She brought me some more coffee. Anyway, there it is. The Jesuits. That's who trained me. They taught me how to think.
I knew it. That's why you're evil.
Yeah, that's why I'm evil. But here's the thing. It didn't work. It actually backfired. It actually backfired because when I heard certain words coming out of these people's mouths, I had suspicions, and I would ask questions, and then I saw that they didn't know the answers, and I just kept my mouth shut from that point on. I said, wait a minute, these people don't know what they're doing. And I suspected everything they said from that point on. And I was really young. I don't remember how young, but I saw some very strange things, probably from the time I was in the second grade. And then at that point, I was very suspicious. And stuff just didn't seem right. The end justifies the means, things like that. These idioms and programming that was happening. And I thought the stuff through, and I said, well, the end justifies the means. That doesn't sound right, because then I could conjure up some pretty bad means, and the end might be good, but if I got to that end by doing horrible things, that's not a good thing.
Yeah.
So I saw the logic was flawed, you know, and I didn't even know what logic was, but he ordered my brain into thinking patterns, and I rejected most of the stuff I was hearing, but I believed in him. I just knew that these people were confused. I didn't know why they were confused. But anyway, the thing of it is, when I was trained to think, it actually backfired, and it went the other way. And so, and that's a good thing.
You defected.
Yeah, so men's traditions were something I repelled because I couldn't track the source, you know.
Yeah.
And so I was actually created to write the book Fossilized Customs. I mean, I've surrendered to that thought. That's what I was created to do, to expose it. In fact, one of the things that really jumped out at me was Ephesians chapter 6. You know, oh, let's look at that.
Yeah.
Ephesians chapter 6.
You'll have to.
Yeah,
What it is.
it was talking about children obeying your parents and the master, for this is right. Respect your father and your mother, which is the first command with a promise. And I like that one. And then it talks about how the servants are to obey their masters, and not with eye service, but sincerely, and as if they're serving Messiah. Now, then it goes on, and it talks about the armor of Elohim, for you to have power to stand against the schemes of the devil, which I was very perceptive of as I was young, because I saw these things. When I started studying this, when I was 35, I said, yeah, they're schemes of the devil, because we don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against authorities, against the world rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual matters of wickedness in the heavenlies. So we have a spiritual enemy. These people that are flesh, they're not really our enemy, they're just misguided. Because of this, take up the complete armor of Elohim, so that you have power to withstand in the wicked day, and having done all to stand, in the power of Messiah. It's in his strength we stand, not ourselves. Stand then, having girded your waist with truth, and having put on the breastplate of righteousness, and having fitted your feet with the preparation of the good news of peace. Above all, having taken up the shield of belief, with which you have the power to quench all the burning arrows of the wicked one. And that was what I was going through too. Take also the helmet of deliverance and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of Elohim. The word of Elohim is always the thing Yahusha used. Praying at all times, in other words, in connection with Yahusha, with all prayer and supplication in the Spirit, watching in all perseverance and supplication for all the set apart ones. In other words, pray for one another, always. Also for me, that a word might be given to me in the opening of my mouth, to be bold in making known the secret of the good news, for which I am an envoy, or an ambassador, in chains, and he was literally in chains, that in it I might speak boldly, as I should speak. So in order that you also might know about me, how I am doing, Tychicus, a beloved brother and trustworthy servant in the master, shall make all matters known to you, whom I did send to you for this same purpose, so that you know about us and might encourage your hearts. Peace to the brothers in love, with belief, with Elohim, the Father, and the Master Yahusha Messiah. Favor be with those who love our Master Yahusha Messiah undecayingly. Amen. Well, I went too far because it was really in chapter 5 that I needed to be reading. But he's talking about, let's see if I can find this. Yeah, there it is. It's Ephesians 5. Yeah, and have no fellowship with darkness. Okay. We have to work in darkness. We just can't have fellowship with darkness. Now, it's talking about the fruit of the Spirit.
What's fellowship with darkness mean? I mean, you don't is that the whole unyoked thing?
Well, we're not fellowship. We're not partaking with what they do.
Okay.
It says, therefore, do not become partakers with them. You're among them, You're in the world, but you're not of the world. You look like you might be with them, but you're not actually practicing them, because that's why Yahusha was sent among the sinners. Therefore, do not be partakers with them, for you were once darkness, but now you are light in the Master. Walk as children of light, for the fruit of the Spirit is in all goodness and righteousness and truth, proving what is well-pleasing to the Master, and have no fellowship with the fruitless works of darkness, but rather reprove them. In other words, let's look at an alternate translation. Looking at the King James Version, it would have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather reprove them. It's the same thing. Yeah, in other words, the word reprove means to expose them and to reveal them, to open them up, to confute with them too, but not in an angry way. You do it out of love. You lovingly guide. And they're not going to accept it right away, because truth, at first, is thought to be ridiculous, and then it's violently opposed, and finally, it's accepted as being completely obvious and completely balanced, and it's because truth is something that sounds ridiculous only in comparison with everything else, because it's all upside down. Everybody's practicing Halloween and Christmas, and they don't even know why. They don't even know what the symbols mean, or where they didn't track them back, because people just are so busy, and they just imitate everything that's done around them. That's why sheep wander around in herds following each other, and they're like sheep without a shepherd. But now Yahusha is guiding people who are shepherds according to his heart. That's what he said. He said, I'm going to create for you. I'm going to bring shepherds into you, among you, and teach you according to my heart. And that's what's happening in the world. And the Nazarene are rising up and saying, come out of there, my people. Get out of that stuff. Get rid of that tree. That's evil. You look at it from his point of view, and you see it.
Yeah.
It's a slow process too,
Yeah. It's interesting when you're talking about Yahusha being immersed, that, he was perfect. He was the creator in the flesh, and yet he still, for the sake of righteousness, as an example, I guess, went ahead and got immersed, just like he created the heavens and the earth and he rested. He doesn't need to rest, but he did, just like we should. So I guess the same thing when they were delivered from Egypt. On the seventh, I think it was the seventh day, wasn't it? They still had to get immersed through the sea. The deliverance and the immersion were kind of separate things. We do it out of obedience because we love him.
That's the main thing. And we also identify, we are identified with him through immersion, because it all goes back to creation, and his immersion and his death and burial and resurrection is all pictured in that. Peter explained that well. That, the immersion is our beginning point. It's when we're born of water.
Yeah.
So it's not complicated. These are images and pictures of the redemption that he's done, and all we have to do is we don't even have to understand them completely at the time we do them. We just have to understand, reflecting back and go, oh, it just takes on a deeper meaning as he fills you with more and more measures of his Spirit. And it's all explained to you from inside, because the physical is really not that important. But he has to use the physical in order to teach the spiritual. The spiritual that it's pointing to. That's why we like to explain things that there's a physical or concrete level, and then there's an abstract level that it's pointing to and referring to.
So for the average person who's looking at the concept of Passover, the two main groups of people on the earth that they have to look at are generally the Yahudim, or the Orthodox Jews, who are all about the unleavened bread and following the feast, and yet they don't seem to talk too much about the Messiah. And then you've got the Christians who talk about the Messiah a lot, but they don't sort of talk about the feast or the unleavened bread or the concept of the blood on the doorposts. And so for the average person standing in the middle of that going, well, which way do I go? Yahusha's really if you look like the eisegesis, that's the right one, isn't it? Just look at Yahusha. He's the...
Well, exegesis is the right one.
Exegesis is the right one.
Yeah.
Yeah, just look at Yahusha.
Yeah. What we're taking out of Scripture alone and not looking at human traditions at all. The Christian human traditions can be disregarded, and rabbinical Judaism, which is a religion in itself, it's a man-made system. We practice Torah. We don't practice Judaism. 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 We're in between the two. We're actually a fusion of the two, where we're both made into one stick again by Messiah. He's taking from the elements of what's true in both and made one new man. But we're called Nazarene. And we don't fit into either group. 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 We don't fit into either group, you know. Although we love both. And they don't love us. We're heretics. We're a cult. You keep the commandments? What? And then the others that see us keeping the commandments, they're all put off by it because we love the commandments, and the concept of loving the commandments, that doesn't even go through their minds in the rabbinical Judaism thing. But they're all about lineage, you know. Well, if you can't prove that you're Jewish, why are you doing that? Because we teach that you don't have to. Well, see, that's another error. The Christians teach that you don't have to obey, and the rabbinical Judaism people teach that you don't have to obey. Well, what's that all about? Who would tell you don't obey? Well, that might be the serpent, the dragon, that's in both groups that doesn't want you to obey. But we obey because Yahusha circumcised our hearts with a love for his Torah, and the Torah is him. You know, he's living in us. And we can't help but obey. We want to. It's not like we're judging either group. It's just that, what? You know, we've got to, they keep the rabbinical Judaism keeps the more of the concrete things, the physical fleshly things, intact, which is good because they receive the oracles and pass them down. And then the Christians adopted all this other outside stuff and mixed it all together into this giant gumbo. And they like to keep their human traditions and keep absolutely none of the festivals because that's what Constantine arranged for them. You know, and he cut all that off and said, no way. Well, that's replacement theology is what that is. There's a new Israel and we are it. You know, but Israel is and always will be those that keep the covenant. Israel is and always will be those that keep the covenant. Israel is and always will be those that keep the covenant. You know, obey the 10 words, you know. And when we keep those 10 words and preserve them and guard them, then we guard his name and we guard his word. See, a lot of Christians think the word is some really nebulous thing. It means all of the word. It does. However, obeying his word is obeying his prescribed ordinances of the Torah, the instructions. You know, and they were given at Sinai. And that's the thing that we address as the core. And if we teach our children those words, it says in Deuteronomy 5, it gives the words, and then in Deuteronomy 6, it says, and these words you are to teach diligently to your children. What word? Well, those words that we just read in Deuteronomy 5. And they're written down. We can read them. It's not like they're up in heaven or in the sky. We have to go hunt for them or go great distances to find them. They're everywhere. They're all around you. And they're the thing that the governments don't want to have anything to do with, because they want you to worship the government.
Yeah. When it talks about in the scripture, I think it's in one of the I forget where it is. Do not eat and drink of the bread and the cup unworthily. Is that sort of saying you can't have non-believers at this particular feast? Or is that talking to how can you eat and drink of the Passover unworthily?
Let's look that up, because that's talking about the Passover too. That's 1 Corinthians 11. Let's read that, because you see, this is about Paul explaining to the Corinthians about the thing that happened at the time that Yahushua was with his disciples the night before he suffered. It says, let's look at 1 Corinthians 11, starting at verse 23. For I received from the Master that which I also delivered to you, that the Master Yahushua, in the night in which he was delivered up, took bread, and having given thanks, he broke it, and said, Take, eat, this is my body, which is broken for you. Do this in remembrance of me. In the same way also the cup after supper, saying, This cup is the renewed covenant in my blood. As often as you drink it, do this in remembrance of me. For as often as you eat this bread and drink this cup, you proclaim the death of the Master until he comes. So that whoever should eat this bread or drink this cup of the Master unworthily shall be guilty of the body and blood of the Master. But let a man examine himself, and so let him eat of the bread and drink of that cup. For the one who is eating and drinking unworthily eats and drinks judgment to himself, not discerning the body of the Master. Because of this, many are weak and sick among you, and many sleep. For if we were to examine ourselves, we would not be judged. But when we are judged, we are disciplined by the Master, that we should not be condemned with the world. So, then, my brothers, when you come together to eat, wait for one another. And if anyone is hungry, let him eat at home, lest you come together for judgment. And for the rest I shall set in order when I come. Well, a lot of times people think that they have to eat every week on Sunday and do this. He's talking about the festival, when we have this. It's a remembrance of his death at the time of the year he died. You don't observe the festivals at improper times. That would be out of order. And Yahushua is very orderly, and it's all about prophecy too, because these are redemptive shadows. And this is something that he said to do whenever you do it. He didn't say just do it whenever you want to do it. He said when you do it. And he would be referring to the time of the Passover. But the unworthily part has to do with a person that is eating of the Passover has to be circumcised. And that would be one of the requirements. And if you are circumcised by the Messiah, then you are certainly circumcised. That would be the sign of the fact that you were immersed, because circumcision is now the outward sign of our pledge of a good conscience, and that would be the sign that we are circumcised. Because circumcised means that the real true circumcision is of the heart, and it's done by Messiah. It's not done by the hands of men. Hands of men, that's going to upset a lot of people. People are going to go, well, yeah, but you've got to go do it. Well, that's just it. What was Acts 15 talking about?
Yeah.
You have to read Acts 15 and many other texts to evoke the correct understanding of circumcision. But it certainly is pertinent that we can't just have people over willy-nilly to our Passover meal at the time that it's time to do that, and then some neighbor walks in and goes, hey, let's do it. Well, that's not for him. That's not for outsiders.
Yeah.
You have to be very careful and say, I'm sorry, we're doing something very special here. And you do it in your home. That's where you observe Passover in your home. with your family and the head of the household. Children are all there to learn about the death of the Messiah. It would be a good idea to read the text of Matthew and you know where the Passover is occurring, and then maybe even go back and read Yeshayahu or Isaiah 53 and connect with that. And then the Exodus.
So just to refresh everybody's memory, there's 2 nights coming up in about a month. There's a Sunday night, which is the memorial. It's not commanded, is it, that? But we remember his death, and that's where you have the bread and the cup, and foot washing, I believe.
Yes, we can do that too, and it is a humbling thing to wash one another's feet. But he said we should wash one another's feet, and we can say that metaphorically as well. In fact, metaphorically, it means daily. In our hearts, we're to put ourselves below the other person. In our hearts, and we don't put ourselves up above ourselves, but one another. There was a text where I believe it was 3rd Yehukanan or 3rd John, where there was somebody. A lot of times, leaders try to put themselves above. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, the letter of 3rd John talks about that. He says, I have no greater joy than to hear of my children walking in truth. Beloved ones, you are acting trustworthily in whatever you do for the brothers and for strangers who have borne witness of your love before the assembly. If you send them forward worthily of Elohim, you shall do well, because they went out for the sake of the name, receiving naught from the Gentiles. Therefore we ought to reach such, so that we become fellow workers for the truth. I wrote to the assembly, but Diotrephes, who loves to be the first among them, does not receive us. So if I come, I shall call to mind his works, which he does, babbling against us with wicked words. And not satisfied with that, he himself does not receive the brothers, and forbids those who wish to, putting them out of the assembly. In other words, we're not to imitate this kind of evil, but we're to love one another and to put another above ourselves instead of lifting ourselves up. And that's what the disciples were doing the night that they were having the supper before Yahushua's execution the next morning. They were all discussing, well, he's going away. I wonder who's going to be in charge. And he's down there starting to wash feet, And, oh boy, it's just, we misunderstand so much. That whoever seeks to be the greatest among us is to be the servant of all, So don't lift yourself up. We're teaching elders, future elders, 20 years from now, 20 years. What was that?
Hopefully by example.
Exactly. Lead by example. That's always a good philosophy.
So I've pulled up your 2013 appointed times chart here, and I've got Pesach, memorial of Yahushua's death. He's the Passover lamb. 14th day at evening of the first moon, and this year in 2013 that is sunset, the 24th of the 3rd month, March. The 24th. So that's a Sunday night, and then the day part, like on the Monday, is a preparation day for the annual Sabbath, which is on the 15th day. So on the 3rd day of the week, like the TUES day, you would take off work. That's your first day of unleavened bread.
15th.
So you take that day off. The night before, that's kind of the first day of unleavened bread. So on the preparation day, you're getting rid of all the leaven out of your house, aren't you?
Right. On preparation day, on the 14th, you make sure. In fact, I start on the 13th. Yeah. And even before that, we start planning days before We don't buy bread and things that are, have leaven. Actually, for maybe even longer than that, sometimes a week before, we'll start saying, wait a minute, we have to, not buy this and stock up high on that because we're going to have to get rid of it. So we try to do away with it. We buy a lot of flat bread, a lot of pita bread or matzah, boxes and boxes of that, according to the number of our household. And
yeah. So you go 7 days with no leaven, and then on the I'll just find my spot. Remember, you've written here, remember, Passover is not a when, but a who. Yahusha is our Passover lamb. And on the 15th day of the first moon, that's sunset MARCH 25th through till sunset MARCH 26th. For 7 days, all Israel is to abstain from leavened bread. This applies to all immersed believers. So on the 7th day of Matzah, what do you generally do then, apart from pig out on bread? What do you generally do on the 7th day of Matzah?
we don't do any kind of regular work. We take that day off too and treat it as a day of a Sabbath, except that we can cook. You can prepare food. And if you just read Leviticus 23 or Deuteronomy 16, you'll see that these are mentioned, and what was happening to Israel in the first Exodus when they came out of Egypt or Mitzrayim. The seventh day was the day that the armies of the Egyptians were drowned in the Sea of Reeds. And so that was a great deliverance. That's a day of remembering that deliverance. But Yirmiyahu, or Jeremiah chapter 3, talks about how the Exodus that's about to happen, the second Exodus, is going to be so overwhelming that that will not even be thought of again.
Wow.
You know, it'll be thought that what will be remembered is the Exodus from the nations, because we're going to be just lifted up and brought into the spiritual temple and assemble with Yahusha, and that he's going to come back home to the earth. We're not going to heaven. We're coming to meet him in the air, and then we're going to come down and be with him forever at the beginning of the millennium. And there still will be some flesh, and they will reproduce and expand in numbers, and we will teach them and guide them with him fully in us. It'll be as if he's multiplied himself. Replication. You know, he'll be in us fully. And we won't have we will be compassionate because he is in us. He's so compassionate. And then because we will also be sharing our vessels with him, we will understand the difficulty of the flesh, and we will guide those people. And many people will I mean, who knows, there could be an uncountable number of people during that 1,000 years that will be added to the assembly through his teaching in our vessels. It's going to be a wonderful thing to be partaking of. But the imagery that Christianity has handed down to its people is less about him and more about their outcome. You know.
So if say a Christian person or someone even like yourself, before you read Isaiah 53, it just happens to stumble across this and watching it, what would you encourage them to be doing at this time of year, as far as seeking out their Messiah? And because most people there's postings all over Facebook, you know, JESUS is our Passover. Okay, well,
yeah.
Sort of, but not quite.
Well, they know quite a bit, because all they have to do is just listen with a little bit more suspicion to those that teach them, and read the text and get everything from the text of Scripture, and whatever they hear that's not in the text, just ignore it. And slowly they will be guided back into the truth of the narrow way, which the Nazarene plod on we stay on the narrow way and follow our shepherd. And just looking at Leviticus 23 and Deuteronomy 16, you can find out that these are shadows of things to come. These are the things that the text is talking about. The shadows represent the redemptive acts, the acts of the Creator's own redemption of His people. And they will enjoin not to a sect of Israel, of Christianity, but they will enjoin to Israel, the commonwealth of Israel. Ephesians chapter 2 and Ephesians chapter 3 and Yirmiyahu 3, or Jeremiah, they all describe the same thing, that we all become fellow citizens of Israel, not Christianity. Christianity is a religion made up by men, principally at the Catechetical School of Alexandria, Egypt, the Circus Fathers. A lot of people don't know what Circus Fathers is, but if they watch enough of our videos, they'll see. But we're not being hateful. We're just telling the truth,
Wonderful.
It is. It is wonderful to have the truth.
Yeah. So it's such a it's one of the most important feasts that we're coming into. Probably the most solemn of all festivals, because it's not really a hey, come and have a party. It's a remembrance. It's a vigil. It's a so as obviously you've got to preach and teach and say lots of things yourself, but to you personally, each year as the Passover would keep unfolding to you, is anything coming to you as you? I mean, I know it's a month away, but is anything coming to you recently that you would want to share? Because we might take a few weeks off, so I don't know if we'll be around before Passover. Is anything coming to you uniquely this year, as far as Yahusha talking to you about this feast?
Well, just his life in us is the intention that he has is for us to teach the commandments to the nations. Things that he commanded us to obey, we're to teach others to obey. And we just don't want to fail at that, because that's our commission, And for us to fail at that would be horrible. Instead, if we go off the rails and we say, well, let's talk about how many wives we can have, or let's go and look at, you see, these things are all fleshly. If we're not in tune with his spirit, we can get divided and all messed up in our objective. But we're sent to the lost, the people that have no clue of why they're on the earth. And they think, well, just being a good person, obeying the government's laws is going to get them through. And it's not. They have to understand that they have to have a relationship with the Passover, the Passover lamb, the one that is going to cover their transgressions, like Yeshayahu or Isaiah 53 talks about. And you can't have an intercessor without knowing him. There is no way. There's no way to go to the Father of lights except through Yahusha. There is no way. There's no way to go to the Father of lights except through Yahusha. There is no way. There's no way to go to the Father of lights except through Yahusha. There is no way. There's no way to go to the Father of lights except through Yahusha. So we need to understand that there's no other alternative faith. There's no hope in Buddhism. And there's no faith, there's no hope in any other man-made religion. Or any religion that has been yoked with other belief systems and turned into some new concoction. I don't want to offend anybody by bringing up any particular faith groups, but I did bring up Buddhism and Hinduism, but those are ancient zodiac-based faith groups in rebellion, But rebellion is basically ignoring Yahuwah, the Creator, and not adjoining to his covenant.
His covenant is the Ten Commandments.
The Ten Commandments, yeah. And if you get to know Yahusha, then you have met your Passover. The thing that he is the person that created everything, seen and unseen. And therefore, to know him and to pray with him is to converse with him. That's what prayer is. It's a conversation that you're having. You can have, most of my conversation with him is silent. My lips move, maybe, but sometimes there. A lot of times people think that the speaking in tongues that they seem to see in the scriptures with unutterable words, or sometimes people's lips are just moving because they're having a conversation. And you can't quite discern it. What? But that's what's going on. You're having a conversation with him all the time, and he's mostly you're listening, though. You know, listening to his heart and seeing the world in his eyes, through his eyes, and then he gives you more and more of that viewpoint, and so that you're better able to be used to reach people who are misguided. You know, and you hear teachers out there that are saying really weird things that are more fleshly than they are spiritual. I was reading this one gentleman's list of articles. He had almost 50 articles on why we can have multiple wives. Well, that's really off the rails.
I have enough drama with one. Come on.
I have enough drama with one, and I feel like I don't give her nearly enough.
Yeah, that's more to the point. Yeah.
Yeah, I really don't, because I need to spend more time with her. You know, there's things that I've studied that I'd like to share with her more and more, and you know, be with my wife. And Adam, the first man, wasn't given Eve and Eva, or you know, all these fake names that we come up with all the time. Kawah was one woman. You know, he didn't take out of the man several women. You know.
Yeah.
The ideal is still right there. It's, you know, eisegesis, read the text, what do you see? And of course there are places where multiple wives are mentioned, concubines and all that sort of thing. But, you know, let's get real, you know.
Yeah.
I hear.
Someone's waking up.
Yeah. Is that Aaliyah?
That's Aaliyah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Okay.
Mummy found her.
Yeah. Well, as far as new things, though, you live in the commandments, and then he reveals to you what the commandment means, and he expands on that each time you do it, you know. So just obey the commandments, like Acts 5:32 says that he gives his spirit to those who obey him.
Yeah.
And then his spirit in you, through the obedience, teaches you from inside the commandment what this represents. That's the thing. See?
You all right, Bob? She's quiet again. So
you only hear me in one ear, eh?
Yeah, I've got
okay.
Earpiece in.
Sneaky.
Otherwise, otherwise your voice gets recorded through the computer, and you're all echoey.
Okay.
So if Yahusha is the Torah and Yahusha is the light and the doorway and also the Passover, somebody coming into the Passover for the first time, if you look upon the commandments, you get to know Yahusha.
Yes, that's his character. It's his mind. The mind of Messiah actually indwells us by the renewing of our mind through the studying of his word, and his word is his commandments. And Romans chapter 12 is a wonderful text for a person that's beginning. It'll show a person what the deal is. And the renewed covenant is expounded upon in Romans chapter 6, chapter 7, and chapter 8. If you just read that a few times, Romans chapter 6, 7, and 8, it's the whole redemptive plan spiritually explained. And Romans 12 is the model of what we are among one another and to the world. You know, it's not the flesh perspective anymore. It's the spiritual perspective. So everything we think about is filtered through the Torah, which is the mind of Messiah, that he instills in us so that we have a conscience that's wired properly, and then we can teach people the pure truth without all those other distractions of the flesh and what we might want to think about and do, and what we can get away with. Because a dark eye is one that's always looking for a way out of obeying the truth. And then the eye of light is always panting for a way to obey, looking for what he wants and what else can I do for your husband? Because see, we're corporately his bride. Israel is his bride, and we become enjoined to Israel. Now, how many Israels are there? That's another thing. If you have multiple wives, well, how many wives does Yahuwah have? He has one, and her name is Israel. He refers to her constantly, and he loves her, and he won't ever forsake his wife. You know, but
Yes. Well, that's a very fully rounded understanding. It's all about Yahusha.
well, you've got to study Scripture, and then through study, you will get the answers to all the questions. Of course, we need to answer questions, but we have to know where to point people. Yeah, and the answers are there. I just can't remember the addresses of all of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you have a wonderful day, mate, and Sabbath.
Yes, Sabbath is coming up for sunset for me, because it's crawling across the earth at over 1,000 miles an hour.
Really?
The Sabbath is happening. Yeah.
Oh,
Because the earth.
Amy said tonight, she said, I wonder who gets Sabbath first in the world. Is that Greenwich?
No, it's you. It's the International Dateline.
Okay.
It's an arbitrary convention, and it's made up by men as a design. And the first of each day starts at the International Dateline in the Pacific Ocean, very close to where you're at.
That's just
So
above us, is it? Or
Well,
below?
it's to your east.
Okay.
It's in your eastward direction.
Okay.
And then if you think of the Great Circle, the prime meridian is the line of longitudinal. The Great Circle is the International Dateline and the prime meridian, and it goes through Greenwich, England. But that's all convention. That's human convention, and I believe it's probable that Yahuwah will honor that convention as the best we can do. I think that it should be more aligned with Jerusalem, but it's the day starts somewhere, but we don't know exactly where.
Yeah. Well,
So we're about to have Sabbath. You're in your Sabbath now. This is
Yeah. To wave your hand.
like this.
You've gone all spooky and out of focus.
Have I started to decompose? Turning into dust already?
That's it.
How's that?
That's better. Much better.
Okay.
Well, when Yahushua comes back, he can go faster than the speed of light, so it really doesn't matter. The whole world will see him.
That too, but
You said something amazing a few weeks ago. It came to me today because a client was saying, "Oh, everybody's so busy and time just seems to go so quickly." Did you say time is actually speeding up? I know it feels like it is, but did you actually say time? I don't know if you said something about light or gravity or something. Time is actually speeding up. Did you say something?
well, I did. It seems like it is, or this light seems to be reflecting aspects of time. We know gravitation and light and physical aspects that Yahuwah created are related to one another. Sometimes locked together but different. And then it seems that light is slowing down. And as light slows down, if light were instantaneous, then the universe isn't as old as the physicists say. If the quasars and everything, they seem to be moving away, and they may be, but they may not be as well. But because light is what they're interpreting. But if light were instantaneous, it says that Yahuwah brought their light to the earth, when he created it. And he may have created them at great distances and then brought their light here. But whatever the case may be, light seems to be slowing down slightly, and scientists have perceived that. And therefore, it might be causing time to speed up. Because when one thing changes, it affects other things. But, these are things that we really don't know much about. But it does seem like time is speeding up, because I can be starting on a project, a very simple project, and 5 minutes goes by, and it's like, well, all I did was take the garbage out. Well, what's going on? Why does it take 5 minutes?
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Time just whips past.
Yeah, you have to multitask just to be able to get everything done in an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah. So hours seem to be faster than they used to be. An hour used to take forever.
Yeah.
Especially at school.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Now you just blink your eye a couple of times and what? That's an hour? Yeah.
Well, we love you guys.
Well, that's what we're here to do. We're here to teach love.
Yep.
We're teaching love. And that's what the commandments do. We learn, love. We learn how to love.
Love these flashcards.
Yeah. Well, I don't have that many today, but Romans 12 is something people should read, though. Well, we love you, and I guess you better go to bed.
Yeah, go to bed. So we'll take a few weeks off, brother. You're busy. You got a lot on your plate, and I got a few things.
At least next week, if not the week after as well. That might be
Yeah.
And we're looking forward to seeing Chris and Victoria.
Yeah.
So we'll see you next time.
We're in touch. Love you, mate.
Love you.
Bye-bye.
We're all sheep, so led astray, clinging to our selfish ways, and Yahushua bore upon himself our crookedness and shame. He came with power from above to renew a covenant of love. His will he did surrender, a lamb to slaughter silent. He didn't even open up his mouth to complain. He was pierced for our transgression, bruised for our iniquity. The punishment that brought our peace was upon him, and by his stripes we are healed. Through his blood we have been sealed. The hand that passed us over crushed our King, the perfect offering. There's no lawlessness or act too mean that Yahushua's blood cannot wash clean. So open up your heart to him and feel his wondrous love. So passionate is he for you, and he longs for you to believe it's true. So see what he surrendered. He thought that you were worth it. He put on sin's mortality just so you could know. He was pierced for our transgression, bruised for our iniquity. The punishment that brought our peace was upon him, and by his stripes we are healed. Through his blood we have been sealed. The hand that passed us over crushed our King. The perfect offering, an offering. He was pierced for our transgression, bruised for our iniquity. The punishment that brought our peace was upon him, and by his stripes we are healed. Through his blood we have been sealed. The hand that passed us over crushed our King. The perfect offering, an offering, the perfect offering. An offering, perfect offering.
All the wise shall shine like the brightness of the sky, leading souls into righteousness and truth. Yeah, lifting up Yahusha in all they do.